Hi there, I'm Graham Fitch and welcome to this month's live practice clinic coming to you on Facebook and then later on YouTube. And what we do in this particular clinic is take questions from Online Academy subscribers, and I will then, in the course of this half hour or sometimes longer, aim to address the questions and come up with solutions to your problems. Now, the problems that you experience might be related to practicing. Well, what is it that you do to solve a problem in the practice? It could be technical, it could be stylistic. It's very difficult to separate these elements out because, after all, when you think about what is piano technique, it's also embracing not just the mechanics of what we do at the keyboard, but what goes on in our thought process, what we do strategically when we sit at the keyboard to do our work. So it's nice to see, I can see Janet is there. Do let me know where you're watching from. Hit the like button and, on YouTube, do subscribe to us so that you'll see what we're doing. We put out quite a lot of content on a regular basis, not only myself, but the rest of my team. So why don't we get straight on with the month's clinic? And the first question comes to us from Eugen or Eugene. I'm not quite sure where you come from. And Eugen says, in your tutorials, you often recommend playing a trill using 3-2-4-3 fingering. Now, Eugen's referring to the short trill that we find in baroque music, this sort of trill. Okay, so let me suggest we could do that trill either with 3-2-3-2 or 3-2-4-3. It all depends on what it is you want to feel in your hand. 3-2-3-2 keeps the hand stiller, but 3-2-4-3 encourages a little bit more mobility. And very often in piano playing, it's the mobility that we want to aim for, mobilizing the hand, which is why when we play repeated notes, very often we won't want to stick with the same finger, but to use different fingers in order that we can move freely across the keyboard. I think that's very often the clue. Just a little bit of mobility stops us from getting tight muscularly. So the 3-2-4-3 fingering is very nice for that purpose. But if you're going to do the 3-2-3-2 for the short trill, I'll talk about longer trills in a second, but the 3-2-3-2 short trill, I like to suggest walking back up the key. So let me do that. Do you see how I'm making a little bit of a movement backwards? And what it involves is each time I play a note, I'm stepping backwards along the key, and I can extend that. If I want, I can come back and forth. But the 3-2-3-2, let me just show you something here. I've got the Purcell ground, the C minor ground in front of me. I'll show you a little bit of that. Do you notice me walking back here? Motion that I'm using there is rotational, so I don't have to do that just with my fingers. I can rotate from my forearm and move back and forth. So in other words, avoid where we can this sort of idea. I call that the piston finger idea. This is really not very nice. The sound that we get from that is robotic. And we're aiming to avoid robotic sounds when we're expressing human music in general. Yeah, so let me play the next episode, if you will, in the ground. So we've just come out of the chorus, as it were. Let me just play that chorus again. that's using all three too. But what I'm doing, I'm using it as, I guess it's a kind of baroque fingering. So let me just show you the cell. I'm using 3-2 both on the trill and on the little group of 16th semiquavers that come after it, rather than trying to do something like this. Connect. Now, you could, if you wanted to, use the 3-2-4-3. See what I did there? So 3-2-4-3. I personally don't like it in this instance, but there are plenty of instances where it does feel nice to use the 3-2-4-3. So it's entirely optional. Just suggest, I would suggest just experimenting with the both of them and see which one has your name on it. Eugen also goes on to ask about whether to practice baroque ornaments in different scales as a technique exercise. Actually, that's a pretty neat idea. Not just baroque ornaments. I mean, you could take a scale and just do that trill on it. You could, if you're thinking of the ornament from the Pathétique, the Schneller ornament. Well, how about doing that over the course of a scale, several scales, E flat major, C sharp minor, whatever it is you want to do, as a little technical exercise. Very good. I like the idea of using a scale for an exercise. Just use the notes of the scale, you already know your scales, and just add on the top of that some exercises. Just before I get off the subject of scale fingering, in longer trills, sorry, not scale fingering, trill fingering. In longer trills, you know, we often find this kind of thing in Mozart, don't we? Now, 3-2 is perfectly okay. And if you're going to do 3-2, the termination might be 1-3-2 at the end. So 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, 1-3-2. That's rather nice. You could also do 3-1. But the 3-1 trill is very good for strength if you want something that's going to go on for quite a while, or something that's just strong. You know. Let's say something like that. I just made that up, but I was using 1-3, 1-3, 1-3 in a rotational way, just from my forearm. My fingers are just there on the end of my arm, and I am rotating. Now there's another trill fingering that if you like, if you want something a bit more measured, which is this 1-3-2-3, 1-3-2-3. And let's say you've got a trill that you want to have very measured at the beginning, then you want it freer, and then you want a diminuendo. You might do the 1-3-2-3, 1-3-2-3, and then go to 1-3, speed it up, and then go to 3-2 as you diminuendo. Let me do it, see if I can do it. That would work. That would work nicely, or could work nicely. But other trills, you know, the beginning of L'Île Joyeuse, I like to do 3-2 there and just undulate a little bit here, just a little gentle undulation. Now I'm hoping you can see my keyboard clearly. What I'm doing here is blocking the release of the keys with my other hand. So I've got my left hand stopping these keys from coming all the way back up again, because when we're trilling certain types of trill, we want to keep right down inside the key at the sounding point. Some people struggle to find that place, so just block the keys from coming all the way up with the other hand, play normally there. Now I'm going to release the left hand and see if I can stay in that spot in the key, so the fingers are not coming all the way up. So that's something on trills from Eugen. Now Paul, this is another thing on trills. Sorry for those of you that are bored with trills or don't particularly like this subject. Paul has recently started the Sinfonia in C by Bach, that's the three-part invention. Having studied several of the two-part inventions, I must admit to finding the trills a bit of a limiting factor with these pieces. It's the execution, particularly where the thumb is holding a note at the same time, and that's bar 5. He can only manage a triplet. Okay, let's look at this, the three-part invention. There, that's bar 5. Now let me just take that slowly for you. Now that is the kosher ornament, by which I mean, if you were to look in any scholarly edition of Bach's music, there could be, and there certainly is in this edition, this is the ABRSM edition, I can point it to you. See where my finger is, I'll release my finger. There's a little scheme at the top that tells you how to do that. I've also got the Alfred edition in front of me, very good edition as well, nice and scholarly. And here's the parallel spot there, do you see where I'm pointing? Now, I then did a little bit of research on that, listening to no less a figure than Gustav Leonhardt on the harpsichord. Who puts the thing before the beat, if you can believe it? He does this, and I'm going to do it slow-mo. Which is no-no, number 1 in baroque playing, putting Bachian trills before the beat. He does it. The other option I would say you could do, and Schiff and other pianists tend to do this, because pianists come from even though it's the same background as a harpsichordist, piano playing divided off from harpsichord playing, and actually sometimes the ornaments sound very klutzy on the piano, even though we're doing them correctly. So it's one thing to be correct and to know the rules, and that's important. It's just like anything else, isn't it? You know the rules, and then you know, in this case I need to bend the rule or do something different. So here's another option for bar 5. Let me go back there. To do a schneller. Now I can justify that in the context of a tied trill. In other words, instead of repeating the upper note, I can play legato by not repeating it. And if I were defending this in front of a panel of baroque specialists, I would say I would do it this way. I'm going to slow it way down. I'm going to tie the first note of the trill. So I am actually factoring in that there is an upper note to that trill. Realistically, I don't think we have time to hear that when we play it, so I would suggest then just do the 3-note job. Either on the beat if you can, or before the beat, as a lot of people are doing. So, you know, the next trill along the line in bar 6 sounds very mechanical, doesn't it, if I play it rigidly? So maybe I'll find a way of bending that a little. Let me just do that better. I have no idea what I did. I think I loitered a little bit on the first note and then got faster, rather than, which sounds a little bit rigid and wooden. So yes, it's a minefield of a subject, ornamentation. Now, Rob asks, in the second movement of Beethoven Sonata in G major, opus 49, number 2, how should bars 67 to 71, the one with the succession of chords, be played? In my version, they look like they should be played kind of legato. When I play, they sound too rough, even with the suggested fingering in my book. Well, it all depends on what book you're looking at, Rob. I have an Urtext edition. Let me just play the beginning of this for people, so just so you've got a sort of reference point. that Beethoven, in my Urtext edition, has marked with slurs, not long phrases, but short slurs, indicating probably here just more of a general prevailing legato flavour. When you come to the section you're talking about, which is the trio, there aren't any markings of any sort in the bars that you mentioned, in the first 4 bars. Leading us to assume that we would play with a non-legato touch. I don't mean necessarily staccato, although we could think of it like bassoons, maybe. Bouncing bassoons, or even a I think it's more wind music. Now, I think that's a little dry, so I would want to put a bit of pedal, perhaps, here. Just not to be pedantic. We want to avoid being pedantic. A little bit of pedal for colour, possibly. What I did was, I didn't play staccato. I played just slightly separated, like think of a pair of oboes or a flute and an oboe, tonguing the note. Tor, 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 tor. Not, but and voice it carefully. And then afterwards, Beethoven's written, carefully written slurs. And I say carefully written, he could have written, he actually wrote, can you hear the difference? A little articulation. Actually here, let me do that better. Now again, that's possibly being a bit pedantic. That's reading quite literally the slurrings. One slur for these, now another slur for these 2 notes, and then nothing on that one. Now that's what Beethoven actually wrote, and I think we need to respect that, even if we decide, that sounds a little choppy on our modern instrument, I'd rather do. Try it at least once. Just to feel if that is suitable. Maybe it's a little overmuch, but you'll find that people will be doing that and people will be responding to it. But Rob, what I would say to you is do get a good edition. Don't get an edition where somebody has put a great big slur over that spot that you're talking about, because that's actually not what Beethoven wanted. He would have written it if he'd wanted it. So finally, the last question comes from Debbie, who just asks very simply, in your online academy workshop, and I did a workshop recently, details of which will be below in the descriptions if you're a YouTube viewer. In your online academy workshop, you created a really lovely singing tone in Calme du Soir by Moszkowski. Could you explain what you did to achieve this? Now, this is a very beautiful little piece by Moszkowski, currently on the grade 7 ABRSM syllabus. Calm of the Evening by Moszkowski. Now, Moszkowski, I'm absolutely adoring Moszkowski. Everything he writes, for not just for the piano, but educationally for the piano, is wonderful. The little studies that he writes, as well as the big studies, are just genius pieces for interesting development for the modern style of piano playing. And he also wrote some great solo pieces as well that have got nothing to do with educational. They're just wonderful vehicles for piano playing. And this is one of them, from 10 Little Morceaux, Petit Morceau, Opus 94. Okay, let me just play the beginning of it, and then I'll just do the first phrase first and then see how much inspiration I've got to go on. So. Little break there because the singer needs to breathe. So I've got very clearly marked in my score legato for this line. Underneath, I have staccato dots for the underneath notes. with slur. So what does that tell us? We've got melody on the top, which ideally we want to play legato. Now, this is a bit of a thorny issue in piano teaching nowadays, but I do believe very strongly that when we've got a legato line that's vocal, if we can join it without twisting our hand or getting tension in our hand, it's better, because we can control our sound so much better. And the sort of sound I want for this line comes from, and again, this is a slightly dirty word, the feeling of pressure or connection with the bottoms of the keys. Now, I'm not thinking very much about releasing my fingers. I'm thinking about rolling from one finger to the next through a very flexible wrist, but not a wrist that wobbles up and down. My arm is also very free here. So I've got this image of an elephant's trunk, which is perhaps gripping something like a coconut on this end and able to manipulate very strongly that grip, but at the same time as keeping everything very free. So when I combine those two touches, what I get is a very strongly projected vocal line against a lighter, looser, more aerated accompaniment. Now, let's go one step further. A vocal line is designed to be sung, even if it's not for the voice. It's for the piano, but it's a vocal, as in sing it. So when you practice it, sing it. I'm not a singer, but there's the kind of interval I want to feel. Now match up the tone. What do I mean by matching up the tone? Well, when we've got a long note, the tone starts to decay, and I want to make sure that the note that comes just after it doesn't have an accent. So I just have to listen and not do this. It's not beautiful. Okay, now there's one other element that we've got to look at. Moszkowski has written a bass note, the D at the beginning. So I sit on that for a long time. So it's not this. I want to establish my bass. I want to wait for those overtones to kind of bubble up. And now I can start. And I'm really reluctant to get rid of that D. I want to hold that D as long as possible. I do have to change my pedal on the fourth beat. Breathe. Maybe do slightly different things. Change of colour, he's going toward E minor. Now, there's a top line, of course. Now, can you hear the top line is answered by an inner voice? So we've got... which I have to play with one hand, but I took it with two hands there just because it's easier to play. So when you're practicing it, you can use that idea. Use two hands and then see if you can use one hand to copy the sound that you did with two hands. So again, you'll notice that the timing that I'm using is not metronomic. It's not... boring. No singer would sing syllabically. So what I do is maybe a little bit of forward movement. I made the quavers, these eighth notes uneven. That's good when we're singing. No singer would sing those evenly. different colour. The interval, if you were singing an interval of a seventh, in this instance a minor seventh, you would not do that without a little bit of time. Intonation, important. Try and sing a minor seventh. It takes a little bit of time. There's another one. That's not even a ninth. That is a ninth, isn't it? That's not a seventh now, but a ninth. From an F sharp to a G sharp in the next octave. You've got to give that a moment. Tenor. Now I know it says piano at the beginning, but vocal, not pianists playing piano, because I'm supposed to play softer. This is the tenor. And that tenor has had to wait until now to have a voice. It's not going to come in sheepishly, it's going to come in with profile in the sound. Build it. Notice there I'm giving those eighth notes shape, direction forwards, direction backwards, a little bit, and then now there we get the bass note. Back again, that low D. So I'm very reluctant to let go of that bass note. I don't want to do something clinically clean like this. Even though that's marked in this addition to release the pedal on the top. I don't care about that because I want to do something more artistic. What I want to do is to hold that D for as long as I can. Now, how to do that? If I just held my pedal down without adjusting it, it's too much. So what I need to do is I need to know a fact about the piano, a really important fact about the piano, that a bass note is hard to get rid of compared to a top note. So I can give you a little demonstration. I'm going to play now this chord. I'm going to do vibrations on my foot. And you should be aware that the low bass note sticks around longer. So my foot is almost fluttering. So when I play this chord, I can play this in the same pedal. Now I'm going to start to vibrate my pedal. If I go back, you probably can't hear through the microphone. I've got a little bit left of that. So that's artistic. I wouldn't expect a grade 7 candidate to know how to do that, but different colour. This register is a different colour, richer the lower we are. Now, farewell. To repeat that phrase, but I don't want to repeat it the same way. I've noticed that there's a scale underneath. So maybe the first time I play that phrase, I'm going to go for the top note. And now I add to my sound, that scale in the left hand, feels like bells to me. Now he does something very, very beautiful at the end. So we've got F sharps all the way. lovely, isn't it? So he changes the fact that the F sharp on the top features in every single chord. Really, to me, means it changes colour. Each time you hear the F sharp, there it's the third of the chord. Here it's the fifth of the chord. There it's the 13th, dominant 13th. And I'm just going to share one last secret with you. And this happens a lot of the time in music toward the end of a piece. We want to sustain that top note to connect it to the F sharp at the end. What we do, release the underneath notes with our fingers. All I'm now doing is holding onto the F sharp, so that when I change pedal on my D, I've got the F sharp ringing. So there's no gaps in the line on the top. So it's a very, very beautiful piece. What I'm doing, just to sum up, going for the vocal style, which involves certain ways of connecting with the keyboard, legato touch where possible, vocal intervals, in other words, the bigger the interval, the more the stretch for that interval, something called intonation, and how the underneath voices contribute to that, and how we sometimes need to bring them up a little bit, find inner voices, but also the basses. So to make sure that when I have a bass that I'm playing with enough sound and giving it enough bloom at the beginning so that it can support what's going on above. Without a supported bass, we're not going to get anything substantial possible at the top. So those are some things that may explain how I achieved the lovely singing tone that you complimented me on, Debbie. So I hope that was interesting and useful. Thank you very much for being here, for your questions, and I guess half an hour, that's probably good, and it's time for me to say goodbye, and I'll see you again next week. Not next week, next month. See you then.